The most significant contribution into creation and development of equipment for NLS method was done by Russian scientists, in particular by academician Svyatoslav Nesterov. Using these preliminary studies, the Institute of Practical Psychophysics, headed by corresponding member of Academy of Medical and Technical Sciences, Vera Nesterova, has manufactured several lines of hardware-software systems for nonlinear torsion diagnostics of Metatron class, which were introduced into practice with the help of academician Anatoly Akimov. These hardware-software systems allow to evaluate extent of entropy at various levels, namely at the levels of an organism, systems, organs, tissues, cells, subcells and molecules. Scientific studies carried out in the last century have proven high biological significance of low-frequency range of wave oscillations from 0.7 to 13 Hz. In this range, central harmonics of functionally specialized cells of human and other mammals organisms are located, using them as a situational modulating stress. At evaluation of quantitative realization of spin momentum of various vectors, allowed to differentiate functionally different cells and identify their possible phase states. Nonlinear diagnostic system includes two expert subsystems, showing quantitative character of right and left-hand polarized spins vectors ratio relating to both separate models of an organism. The first subsystem, and separate fixed points on the specific models, the second subsystem. The basis of the first expert subsystem functioning is a study of biological response of a certain region of an organism from single molecule of protein to the whole organism to a standard modulating frequency range 1.8, 8.2 Hz in the context of each of two vectors prevailing, right and left-hand polarized spins. It allows to get a set of 18 information points. 9 points of right-hand polarized spin and 9 points of left-hand polarized spin. These points are arranged in relation to inverse image of a white noise as a carrier frequency with maximum amplitude of 256 decibel. Combinations of these 18 points in relation to the mentioned amplitude, stated in relative units calculated to 2 decimal places, are highly specific. To ensure optimal perception by user, these points are linked together to form diagrams of colored Flinders scale. A diagram of right-hand polarized spin is shown in red color, left-hand polarized in blue color. These studies have proven that for certain functional types of organism cells, each modulating frequency is a certain harmonics among other 8 modulating frequencies. Comparing of real objects' images with corresponding models of organopreparations, etalons of the optimum, allows to detect the most pathologically changed systems and organs in the whole organism. Blue diagram of left-hand polarized spin shows a degree of functional activity of the analyzed object, when red diagram shows degree of its restorability. Graphical representation of researched models is the main expert subsystem of the device, and it provides acquisition of the maximum of diagnostic data. The second expert subsystem is the analysis of fixed points located on the studied models. It allows to evaluate a degree and a vector of right and left-hand polarized spins torsion fields balance of a separate point, and thus to present the model of a structured fashion. In other words, to detect pathologically changed areas, and areas maintaining the function of the researched model. To fulfill this goal, we use a matrix of 13 possible phase states, 6 stages of anabolic changes and 6 catabolic, with the initial 0 phase states representing an ideal quality of physiological systems. Therefore, physiological phase states of compensatory capabilities lie within the range of plus-minus first-third phases, pathological ones plus-minus fourth-sixth phases. accordingly in red and blue spectrum shift of each studied tissue. Taking into account above-mentioned conditions, we created software database containing models of optimal states of organs, tissues, cells, chemical and biological molecules, images of stable pathological conditions, models of helminthes, animalcules, microbes, viruses, allergens and food products. Application of vegeto test allows to simulate a degree of possible correction with various therapeutic agents, and to create an individual program for organism restoration in real-time mode. Application of metatherapy provides optimization of functional state of specific biological models in real-time mode, but when it is applied in destruction mode, it suppresses functional state of microorganisms by creating of high-voltage torsion fields in them. Application of multiple factor analysis, spectral entropic analysis allow to evaluate quantitative presence of separate chemical and biochemical agents in a certain environment. Within the given range of upper and lower values, the system carries out 7-step ranged evaluation of separate elements in relation to the chosen model. It can be an organism, an organ, a tissue, and so on. System allows to evaluate entropy degree in interatomic bonds in complicated molecules of albuminose compounds, and thus shows the level of their functional capabilities or the level of potency. Hardware-software systems of nonlinear diagnostics Metatron may be used in clinics and in private practice rooms. It is reasonable to use the system in sports and military medicine, in homeopathic and psychological practices, environment protection programs, and many others. On the basis of previously acquired vector parameters from particular organs, tissues, or other regions, specific cells, and other areas, the system can create original information preparations, so-called metazodes, with direct effect. To create a metazode, various models can be used as the source data, for example models of perfectly healthy conditions and pathological states, models of various etiological factors, microbes and so on, therapeutic agents, allopathy, etc. As we spoke before, testing of organisms' conditions with Metatron system is carried out by means of resonance amplification of a studied organ oscillations and reading of data by contactless way with trigger sensors. For the first time, distant effect of interaction between objects of animate and inanimate nature, in other words, transfer of information impulses from a human to a device, in other words, transfer of information impulses from a human to a device, was registered in experiments carried out by Russian scientist Valery Kravkov in the 20s of the last century. Reactions of various semiconductor structures to human influence were studied under guidance of Professor Vyacheslav Togatov. It was proven by experiments that human brain can influence a sensor of a device without any wires. Devices of Metatron class can evaluate level of information background noise around destructed biological objects. Trigger sensor is a device that registers information background noise from biological objects. Trigger sensor is a broadband noise generator. Special oscillator diode is used as a noise generator. Noise generator, after it adjusts to resonance frequency of biological objects, allows to get frequency resonance characteristics of noise from researched objects in standard range of frequencies. Received signal may be sent to oscillator or computer for further frequency spectral analysis. Creators of the system used remote biological feedback to receive brain activity signals and transformation of this information into pulse sequence by means of trigger sensor. Another element of the system, cadister, is designed to work with a patient directly to amplify effect of a trigger sensor. It consists of semiconductor carbonic monocrystal, which acts as an optoelectronic element when it is influenced by a laser. When laser emission targets a cadister, a temporary short circuit happens in a semiconductor, and at the same time a certain amount of energy is released. Repeating of this process with high frequency causes periodic accumulation and release of energy. It was found that preferable laser wavelength is 630–680 nanometers. Activation of periodic elimination of a cadister by laser emission results in periodic release of energy, which results in increasing of intuition potential of a patient. In the described situation, both electromagnetic and torsion component of laser emission are targeted to a patient. To shield electromagnetic component, microwave resonator is used. It prevents penetration of the electromagnetic component and at the same time shapes and directs torsion component as the only irritator to affect a patient. One of the main elements in Metatron system is M and S magnetic conductors, which activate certain areas of brain cortex. The Institute of Practical Psychophysics manufactures systems with generators of 860 MHz, 1.4 GHz, 4.9 GHz frequency. Recently, it started to manufacture high-frequency stationary HSS with frequency of 40 GHz. The higher frequency of generated field, the higher resolution of HSS. HSS with 4.9 GHz generation frequency has 510 microns resolution, but HSS with 40 GHz generation frequency has a resolution of 100 angstrom, which allows to evaluate ultrastructure of cell, chromosome, DNA molecule, and fulfill wave correction of genome. Each organ in an organism is a wave oscillator with its own specific frequency. There are a few large oscillators in an organism: brain, liver, and other organs. Maximum wave amplitudes of these oscillators, when they overlaid, form unique structure, energy information frame of human organism. When energy information frame is projected to a human body, it gives a picture of geometrical grid. For the first time, this grid was described by ancient Chinese authors. It is Yin-Luo meridian system projection to skin. Intersection points of wave maximum amplitudes from various biological sources, grid points, are called acupuncture, biologically active points. Acupuncture points exist not only on the surface of human body, but inside and on the surface of every organ. Laws of physics state, the higher generation frequency, the lesser wavelength. Therefore, if we increase generation frequency, we will decrease proportionally size of every cell in energy information frame of human organism. We can evaluate condition of every specific point on an organ relying on characteristics of biologically active points only, which have strictly individual wave characteristics: frequency, ratio, signal amplitude and wavelength. By maximum topological approach of researched point to biologically active point, which becomes lesser with decreasing of grid cell. Thus we see that the higher frequency of generator is, the higher resolution capability of a device. These studies have proven that patient's influence to a trigger sensor is more reproducible on a chopping frequency of electromagnetic impulses close to theta rhythm of patient's brain waves. This frequency oscillates upwards and downwards depending on the health condition of a patient. An interrelation between frequency oscillation and pathological state of an organism systems, organs, separate cells and chromosomes fragments was revealed. This interrelation allows to diagnose various pathological states. For example, diagnostics of intravertebral discs protrusion, pancreatic diabetes, bone fractures and traumas, blood vessels thrombosis, acute and chronic hepatitis, cirrhosis, and many other pathological states. It should be noted that such diagnostics can be carried out using subconscious level of brain function. In other words, irrespective of patient's influence. Even in those rare cases when clinical symptoms and signs are typical, NLS diagnostics method brings additional information about the extent of affection and allows to make forecasts. In the majority of cases, it has a principal meaning for diagnosing and therefore for choosing of proper treatment course. Academician Sviatoslav Pavlovich Nesterov is the inventor of NLS diagnostics. He invented a trigger sensor in 1988 and thus found the idea of the system. Right away, a work to develop and improve NLS diagnostic systems was started. A period from 1990 to 1995 was characterized by clinical tests of the first systems. Late 90s were marked by quick growth of commercial production of systems and a great advance in quality of acquired results. Non-linear diagnostic method is still being developed. Diagnostic methods improve very fast, so the versions of the system are renewed every 6 months. By means of using of new systems with digital trigger sensors, NLS diagnostic became not only faster, but its quality was increased also. The Institute of Practical Psychophysics continues the search of new methods of investigation on the basis of nonlinear analysis systems. The results are very promising. Differing from computer tomography and NMR, NLS analysis does not require fields of high intensity. Inventing of a new generation of computer nonlinear scanners for Metatron systems, in which three-dimensional virtual visualization of investigated object is applied, allowed to increase significantly the efficiency of NLS method itself and extend its field of application. The peculiarity of NLS multidimensional visualization is initially multidimensional character of scanning. The results of such scanning represent a single array which facilitate reconstruction of multidimensional virtual pictures of anatomic structures of the investigated object. As a result, virtual NLS can be widely used, in particular for angiographic studies with three-dimensional reconstruction of vascular structures. Preparation of images for visual analysis is carried out by means of 4D tissue original technology developed by the Institute that allows not only getting of virtual three-dimensional images of anatomic structures, but also marking of a researched biologic tissue with color, so-called additional dimension, and visualizing of bones, soft tissues and vessels simultaneously or in any desired succession. The cost of NLS diagnostic systems is much lower than the cost of other methods of hardware diagnostic. It promotes wide application of the method in countries with low income of population. Comparing with other methods of hardware diagnostic, NLS allows getting the image closest to pathologo-anatomic one. This, together with safety, promotes quick developments of NLS diagnostic method. Another promising area of NLS technology development is creation of nonlinear telemedicine monitoring system. A remarkable feature of this method lies in enhancing of the sensitivity of diagnostics and expanding the system's functionality due to technologically remote diagnostics, telediagnostics, in a synchronous mode of a dialogue between a therapist and a patient, when they can communicate with each other interactively regardless of the distance between them. TORDI system, which is being developed by the Institute of Practical Psychophysics, provides opportunity to ensure an audio-visual contact between a patient and a doctor during torsion diagnostics, when doctor is at a great distance from the patient. The equipment can be applied in clinics, diagnostic centers and scientific research institutes to carry out distant diagnostics of patients using mobile terminals. In field conditions, in the mountains, at sea, the array of the obtained data is sent through a specialized server to a medical advisory center with the observance of data safety requirements. More and more clinical therapists realize necessity to master NLS diagnostic equipment, because the need in properly educated experts in this field is obvious. At the same time, among traditional medicine specialists, there is a tendency to maintain a focus on researches with computed X-ray imaging and magnetic resonance imaging. That is why NLS technologies, unfortunately, are still hidden among more orthodox methods of diagnostics. Clinicians will be ready, in many aspects are already ready to improve their diagnostic possibilities by using of NLS technology, often without XCT, MRI, and radionuclide methods. Nevertheless, only in strategic partnership of NLS diagnostics experts, radiologists and clinicians may be found a key to optimal diagnostic and healing application of this, in all senses, original and efficient medical technology.